you tell me what you believe about God, I could probably tell you where you stand on those 7 issues.
You dig, you turn away from your sins, and you follow him. That's it.
Are people thinking about God? What we think about God is important because it does inform every area of our life. And it's been said, you tell me what you think about God, I'll tell you what you think about everything else.
I was like, I sound like an idiot. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Patros Podcast, where we are embracing healthy masculinity. My name is Allan Pereira. This is El Jefe, Jeff Ford, Jeffrey Ford, Jefferson.
All of the above.
All of the above. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Beat you to it.
You got me. Yeah, you got me. Well, this is like the 5th take on this podcast, so like I'm coming down from the sweating. So if there's a glisten on my forehead, folks, you know why.
We couldn't gather our...
oh, man. I'm crying. Not from sadness.
Yeah, just laughter.
Just laughter, but it's all good. It's all good. Listen, I'm excited because we're going to talk. I think it would be a good idea. Let me get your take on this, right? Mm-hmm. So as regular dudes, because I know you went to school to be a pastor originally.
At one point.
At one point. And then you stopped because you're trying to prove your family wrong.
To prove a point.
Is it to prove a point?
Well, that wasn't the only reason, but...
Okay.
Yeah, when I watched that back, I was like, I sound like an idiot.
But at the end of the day, the whole idea was that you were like, man, this Jesus thing is real, and I'm going to show everybody that
it's real to me.
You don't have to be a priest or a pastor or whatever. You don't have to be in ministry to be like all into Jesus. And for most people out there, they are not in the priesthood. They're not in the pastorate. Just dudes.
Yeah.
Working 9 to 5s, working the overnight, whatever it is that they're doing. So, like, what's your take on theology? Like, what is theology? Like, can we really expect the everyday average Joe to have a solid take on theology?
Well, I think you start off like the study of God, right? Like, that's the meaning of theology.
Ology, study of theos, God.
Yeah.
You got it.
And yeah, like my take on theology is everything in every person's life, male or female, regardless of your walk, is founded on like what you value. And when you really peel back all the layers, it all, I feel like, is rooted on where you believe you come from and what your purpose is like drawn from. And so for some people, if there's no study of God or no understanding of who God is, or if there even is a creator, you don't have a foundation on like where you're going. And I think that's like why it's so pivotal for us to have a study of God.
Are people thinking about God?
Not a lot. Not all people. I don't think so.
Because, they do surveys and they say like most people believe in a God. I know it's going down, but still majority of people believe in a God, but are they thinking about him or it or, whatever they think it may be?
What's been your experience? Like,
you talking about me or the people?
People around you. Because I know you grew up with God, like, in the household.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we were talking about the flyover states and they get no love, so it's like, the reason Nebraska exists is because you got to get from New York to L.A. It's like nobody cares about the flyover states.
Yeah, true.
But having been raised in the flyover states, I mean, it's a lot of good people, right? Like, and when I say good, I don't mean this theologically, and so maybe we can talk about that. But I mean it in the general sense of humanity. They have some kind of foundation that roots them, that grounds them. And a lot of that is based in what I would say is at least a Judeo-Christian ethic. They may not know a lot about it. They may not, be theologian, but, that kind of heard some things. A lot of Catholicism, right? Different patches and pockets of Catholicism, which, and let me be clear to our Catholic friends, I think we would, well, I'll make this statement. I'm not going to speak for you, but I think we would both agree that you can be Catholic and be a Christian. You can be Catholic and not be a Christian. You could be Baptist or Presbyterian or non-denominational or whatever it is and be a Christian, or you could be all those things and not be a Christian. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
So the point is, we use these terms interchangeably, we are not saying that all of those people have a relationship with God as described in the Bible. They may have a relationship with God that,
like everybody has a relationship with God, but are you adopted into his family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, so I think, do people think about God? I think they think about God when they're in trouble, right? Like stuff has hit the fan and they're like, I'm at the end of my rope. I have like gone through all my self-sufficiency, right? And I need an answer.
I'll give the supernatural world a try.
Let me give it a try.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a death, somebody. Most people that draws them away from God, but some people it draws them to, financial hardship, unplanned pregnancy. God, if you just get me out of this one, I promise I'll, there could be all sorts of things, but I find that people do people meditate on God?
I don't think God is on the forefront of people's minds.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to enough people where it's just like you ask just a few questions, like basic questions, and it's like as if you're speaking a different language. Because you really are. But
so I think that's the question on the table for today. And, we're going to kind of start this new series. And I don't know what we're going to call it. It'll be called Theology for Dummies. Theology for Dumb Men.
For smart people that watch Patros Podcast.
But really, for people who are into lifelong learning. But I think theology for busy men, maybe something like that, where it's like, because I think we would both agree that theology is important. What we think about God is important because it does inform every area of our life. And it's been said, you tell me what you think about God, I'll tell you what you think about everything else. And that is probably pretty close. We might be able to put that to the test a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like you could give me your stances on, say, 7 different issues. And I might not know where you're going. I don't know. But then you tell me what you believe about God, I could probably tell you where you stand on those 7 issues. Right? You see what I'm saying? Like if I know the one thing, I can probably get pretty close on all the others.
Yeah.
So we're going to be kind of diving into this a little bit, but I think the question on the table for this episode is it necessary? Is it really necessary for a guy who is just trying to keep food on the table? He's working 50, 60 hours a week. Inflation is high. Wages are stagnant.
Yeah, middle class now, I think you have to make $150,000 a year to be like decently okay.
Really? Middle class?
Middle.
Oh, middle.
Like middle.
Is this like a class?
Middle class.
I thought you were like taking something.
No, I've been saying.
Like you signed up for the metal class.
Yeah.
Like you were like working in glass and metal and.
What is it? Like a smith? What is it? A smith? A blacksmith?
A blacksmith, yeah. Which is metal.
No,
you're not doing that. But yeah, like, so is it for that type of person? Is it really like, is this meditation on God really all that important? Do we need to do that? Given all the other stuff that we have going on, is that something that we should take time to do? And I mean, obviously, I think we're going to come to the conclusion of yes, or that's our presupposition, at least for this discussion. But then it's like, okay, if I'm out there listening, I'm like, well, prove it to me. Why should I care about God? Why should I meditate? And why should I? And if you think about meditation on God as theology, why should I get theological? So maybe let's start with this. What we've established the premise that theology is a study of God. What would you say study is? Number one. And then I think 1B to that 1A is which God? Which God do I study? Because there's a lot of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when a lot of Christians throw around the term of theology, initially think Bible. But like 66 books of the Bible, unless you're a different sect of Christianity that has a little
Catholics are reading more, yeah.
But typically it's the Holy Bible. Obviously you have other types of religions that their theology would be the studies of other gods. And I think it is important for you to, on your journey, if you haven't landed on, like, I believe that after my journey, I landed on the scriptures of the Bible. But, like, yeah, people search and, like, they read the Quran or they read other, books. But I believe that that's just the study of God, is to read scriptures, manuscripts, and then to come to a conclusion through historical data, like continuity and critical thinking, like all these different aspects of how you think, I think are part of studying.
Yeah.
I don't know. What would you say?
Well, can a study of God include, like, is it okay for a Christian to read the Quran or read the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita or, whatever holy scripture is out there? Is that okay? You okay with that? Or
I don't believe that. So I personally don't believe that reading the Quran is the study of God.
Okay.
But like of the actual God. But I believe that, like, if you went from like a non-Christian worldview of a study of like lowercase God, like people would see it as a theology, like a study of a God, but I wouldn't say that it's the study of the God.
Right.
So, like, I think it's important for Christians to know what's out there, but I don't believe that that's theology, yeah.
Okay.
Which is, I guess, weird because that is a theology to some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's probably like when you've come down on what you believe to be the truth is, then you want to study more of that truth, right? What is it, the saying that, if you fall for anything, what's that statement? Like if
you don't stand for something, you won't fall for anything.
Yeah. Like at some point in your life, you probably do have to make a stand in what you believe. Like cognitively, it helps us. Like, and if you believed in evolution, you would say, well, that's just the human, brain being able to cognitively decipher the world, and he got to that point where that belief in God or that worldview, whatever, helped him to survive because it gave him X, Y, Z, benefit, skills. And so like there's part of that I think, okay, I can kind of see that. But then there's also the part of this idea of truth. Like, does truth actually exist? And I've got a friend who, is kind of, in a deconstruction process, I would say. And, we got to argue, but I was like, well, is this table a table? And he's like,
is it?
I don't know.
That's what I was doing. I hate that.
Is it? It's just like molecules, and we reduce it down, it's energy, and,
but even the
matter and then not matter.
Yeah. Is a truth statement.
Well, yeah. I mean, but that's what he would say. It's like, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not knowing, right? And I think there are certain things that I'm okay with not knowing. But which of those things am I okay with not knowing? And let's just, if God exists, right? If you don't have the Bible, you don't have any other scriptures of any other religion or whatever, do we have enough in nature in what we observe to say, there's probably a God? I think we do.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, okay, if God exists, now his argument would be that God is really like, God is energy. It's kind of what he's come to. So it's like he is the
energy needs to be directed.
Yeah, but he's the, and I'm
he's a force.
I'm putting words in his mouth right now a little bit, but like wherever there is energy,
there's God.
There is God, which means he can be in the ocean, he can be in the sky, he can be in a person, he can be in an animal, he can be in all of that.
But God is an entity as well, or just a force?
That is God. That's what we commonly refer to as God, is kind of this energy. I don't even know they would say it a force, so I don't want to put words in his mouth, because energy is the term that he used.
Well, that's very like New Age, I feel like, mixed with like.
It is, but it's
Gnosticism.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, I think it's kind of like reductive, right? Kind of reducing everything down to its kind of base, like whatever, and what is out there, and you're like, well, if we look at nature, we say, well, there's nature, but you reduce nature down to molecules and energy and, certain, atoms, et cetera. And it's like, well, what's that? And then you look at the universe, and we only know what 5% of the universe is, and we don't even know what the other.
We don't even know if we know 5%.
And we don't even know if we know 5%. Yeah. So it's like all of that. You reduce it all down. It's kind of like, well, all of these unexplainable things that really, if humans live for the next trillion years, we still wouldn't get to that information we call God. You know what I mean? So it's like all of that that's out there.
God of the gaps, but it's a different way of.
It's a different way of looking at it. It's kind of a God of the gaps, but it's a different way of looking at it. It's definitely not a personal God. Mm-hmm. Definitely not a personal God. And so, can you get to God by just looking at nature? So he would say yes, but that God is not a personal God.
God is nature.
Yeah. And I've come to the conclusion, I just can't tell how many times I looked at the stars and I would go, okay, where did those come from? Mm-hmm. Right? And even if you take the whole like dark matter, energy, whatever, and that's God, well, where did that come from? That's because that's a thing. Where did that come from? And then you go, obviously, as a Christian, I take that all the way back, and I go, well, there can't be an uncaused cause, right? There has to be a cause for, right? If we have stuff in the world, and they would say, well, that's cheating to then bring in like an outside entity. But for me, it makes sense.
It's necessary,
because otherwise the stack of cards falls. But it falls for everybody because you take it back far enough, you have to have something that started it all. Something can't come from nothing, despite the scientists trying to say that it does. It's hilarious to me.
Yeah.
So why not can we just be honest about it, right? And just say, okay, we're not sure, but if we have two brain cells to put together, it would seem as though there is something that is unlike anything that we know that's out there. Call it an alien, I don't care. But at least don't say something can come from nothing.
Yeah. Well, because it doesn't, and that's where, science and philosophy intersect, is, your ability to critically think is necessary, because outside of science, there's, all the philosophical, moralist, science doesn't always explain morals and ethics.
No, it doesn't explain any of it.
A lot of it, yeah.
I would say it doesn't explain any of it.
Yeah,
science can only explain what happens. It only tell you what happens.
It needs to be repeatable.
Yeah.
And so the fact of everything originating from nothing, completely unguided chaos creating order, that's just nowhere in human history do we look at perfect order that's replicating itself, right? If I cut my skin, I remember talking to this one scientist that said we have 30 trillion cells in our body, but how do certain cells know to become the liver?
Or the heart.
Or the
blood. Or
and then your skin knows to regenerate in a very specific color. Why? The coding is why it knows that. Right. It's coded
it's
for it.
It's coded to do that.
Yeah.
And where the code is off, you find mutation and disorder.
Devolution. Yeah. And so the code is so sophisticated that we have all the scientists in the world that still can't fully understand the coding in the DNA. Yet that's what's random.
I know.
That's the thing that's random is 8 billion humans that have replicated, the process.
And all of that information, we haven't known this until very recently in human history.
Darwin didn't know a lot of this, and people were just following his lead.
If Darwin had what we have today, I just feel like he'd totally debunk. He would just reverse course and be like, guys.
I'd hope so.
Well, you would hope so. But, the wicked are, the heart is deceitful and wicked above all else. So,
but that goes back to your question on theology and worldview, is that a lot of scientists have a worldview and will funnel their science, and when science doesn't fit the worldview, they'll figure out a way to do the job. Do y'all want to hear more of that conversation? Well, you can by becoming a Patros subscriber. You'll get exclusive member-only content. Just go to the link in the description or go to the Patros website.
Yeah, and when you become a subscriber, what you're telling us is that you enjoy this content and you want to hear more of it. So every dollar that you give helps us do just that.
So thank you again for listening, as we just together go on this journey of embracing healthy masculinity.